you like shopping online and supporting political dialogue? Well, Kitchen Table Politics and Amazon.com has partnered up so that you can do both at the same time with no additional cost to you. Here's how it works. Go to ktpolitics.com and click on the Amazon tab. Then shop on Amazon just like you intended. Amazon will give the show a small portion of the proceeds. It's that simple. Again, it doesn't cost you anything extra, so you are supporting the show just by shopping as you normally would. Now please enjoy the rest of the show. Hi, folks. Welcome back to Kitchen Table Politics. I'm your host, Jeremy Massengale, and this is the podcast where we all sit around the kitchen table and talk about political ideas. Today, I have Jeanette Simpson with me. She is the founder of MeetWeThePeople.org, and I am very excited to talk about a project that she has going on. Jeanette, thank you for being with us.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Jeanette, could you tell us a little bit about your organization and what you have going on there?
Sure. It's not really an organization. It's an independent project that I started just last year, and it's a website, and it's similar to Humans of New York, which is a photography website, and it shows various people in New York, pictures of them, and then there's a small little snippet of an interview, and it kind of gives you like a window into this person. And they're like the people you might pass on the street and never speak to, and so it's a really beautiful thing. And I got interested in politics actually because of Trump. I was fascinated by his messaging. I'm a brand strategist, so I'm very interested in effective messaging. And I wanted to understand his support base a little bit better, so I decided to go meet some Trump supporters. And I went to some of their Trump support groups, and it was really an eye-opening experience. But what I quickly saw was the division that everybody's talking about now, and the anger and frustration. And I also ended up going to some libertarian meetings and seeing the same thing. And I had this sort of insight that, oh my gosh, we all feel the same way. You know, we're all divided, and yet we're experiencing the exact same thing. We're all disgusted with each other. And so I thought, well, what else do we share? And so then I got this idea to do a project similar to Humans of New York. It basically we went around New York City and we took photographs of people from all different political parties, and I interviewed them. And so when you go to the website, you'll see a photo and you'll see an interview. And the idea is that you don't know what political party they belong to, but maybe it's somebody that you would connect with and you like. And then what you do is you hover over the photo, and it'll flip over and tell you what political party they belong to. I wanted people to see each other as human beings first, and not to prejudge them. And hopefully there are some little surprises in there. I've had people say they were shocked by some of them, so that was good. So that's basically the project. I just kind of wanted to give people an opportunity to maybe be a little more open-minded. And I don't think it's going to change the world or anything like that, but maybe hopefully it'll make people stop and think for a second and have a different perspective.
I completely agree. I don't know if you saw the commercial or not, but during the election, I believe it was on CNN, there was a commercial where a lady had a dog on a leash, and she went to a Trump rally first with a Hillary T-shirt on and walked up and down the line trying to find this dog's owner. And even though as heated as it was during that time, everybody treated her kindly, even though she had a Hillary shirt on, because she had a dog with her.
Wonderful.
And then she did the same thing at a Hillary rally. She wore a Trump shirt and went to the Hillary rally and had this dog with her and was pretending to try to find the dog's owner. And everybody treated her with kindness, even though she was wearing a Trump shirt. So we are not really that different on either side of the aisle.
It's really interesting. I think what I've observed is that it takes the right incentive to make people put politics aside to be decent to each other. If the right incentive is in place, people will do it. But sometimes it's hard to find that incentive, and sometimes people don't want to find the incentive, right? Sometimes they're just angry and they want to be angry. And I do think it takes work. I mean, one of my really big takeaways was that it takes work. It's hard. You're standing in front of somebody and you're just furious with their beliefs. Like, you just can't even believe they believe what they believe. I mean, it's horrible. But you have to, I mean, for me, I guess I learned this because it was my job to interview people that I disagreed with. And it was my job to present them in a positive light. So I had to find something good about them. I had to find something that I liked. And you know what? I was able to with every single one of them. You can do it.
Right. Well, that is an amazing story. And I think it's one that we can all learn from. I've talked about it many times on this podcast. It's really why I started this podcast, was to talk to people from all spectrums of the political world so that we can
fantastic.
Yeah, so we can all get an idea of what we all really want. And I think almost in every case, it's the same thing. We want people to be taken care of, and we want people to be able to live their lives kind of how they want to.
Yeah, I agree.
On the left and right, we both want that, but the way we get there is completely different, and that's where we're getting bogged down. So if we don't talk about those things, you know, how are we ever going to get over it and to actually accomplish what we both want? Right.
I think it's weird that I think a lot of the division, sometimes I feel like people are running their own personal agendas. It's like, I don't know, maybe people, and this is left and right, people who are, I don't know, angry about their lives or something, and it's like they use politics to sort of as an excuse to be able to just vomit on people. And that's tough to see, you know, because it's like they're not interested in sort of connecting and understanding. They're just interested in running their own personal agenda.
I think that may be true of everything right now, not just politics, especially with the with the advent of social media. People are kind of terrible to each other.
Yes. I think that's true. Well, you know, there's something interesting that I discovered recently. So when I did this project, when I put it up like 6 weeks before the election. I sort of rejoined the world of Facebook, and I went to high school overseas in Indonesia, and it was an international school. We had a lot of Americans. But what was different about this school is that, so normally a high school in the United States, everybody's from the same geographic area, right? So the probabilities are higher that everyone is like-minded. I mean, I recognize that isn't always the case, but, you know, more people are like-minded usually. So my high school, we had people, so Indonesia has oil, so we had people from Texas and Oklahoma, you know, whose fathers worked for oil companies. And then my dad worked for the embassy, so I was like an East Coast kid. So we have this really broad spectrum of kids. And yet at that time, politics wasn't even on our radar, really, right? So we were just a bunch of kids together. Well, now this group, so it's Jakarta International School, JIS. So the JIS community is really kind of tight. And it's not like just one class. You're kind of, if you've gone to JIS, doesn't matter what year you are, you're like part of this group. So we also have a really broad spectrum of political beliefs in this group. And sometimes things get touchy, for sure. I've experienced it and I've seen it. But I have seen more people push aside their politics and just kind of stomach somebody else's, like, I mean, it's not like people are being shy about their political beliefs, right? They're putting up stuff right and left. And yet I see them getting along. And I think it's because they want to belong to the community more than they want to put politics first. I remember I saw this one post. It was, oh my God, it was really hard to read because it was a bunch of liberals basically jumping on this girl who was conservative. And I went to high school with her, and she's a very nice woman now, girl. And she just kind of, she didn't attack anybody. She just like sort of stood her ground. She said, I'm just expressing my feelings. I thought she handled it beautifully. And it was like she was in a sea of sharks. And I actually sent her a message, and I just said, I saw what happened, and I just want you to know that I really was impressed with how you handled that, and thank you. And, you know, that what you did is noticed and appreciated.
Right.
And I think she did appreciate it. I think it was a little hard for her, but it was interesting. She could have easily just been like, you know what, screw you guys, and just lashed out at them. But I suspect it was because the community was important to her, and probably also because I think she's a good person. But you know what I'm saying? She didn't just sort of jump into a fight with them.
Absolutely. I can see how easily that would be to, come back at them or whatever. But it's, agree with him or not, Marco Rubio stood on the Senate floor a couple weeks ago and discussed this very thing about how people are treating each other, the language that's being used, the harshness. And I know the context of when he was doing that speech is controversial, but what he had to say is still true about how we're not going to achieve anything on either side if we just keep fighting each other, and then that eventually turns to violence, which we're starting to see a little bit of now.
Yeah, it's terrifying. It is. I think part of the problem also is I think this is just a human thing. We sort of we think other people think like us, and that's a mistake. For instance, what is really funny is when liberals think that they're going to influence conservatives by shaming them with things that would shame a liberal, and the conservatives are like, yeah, we don't care.
Right.
Right. Yeah, we really don't care about that, and and it's funny, right? You're just like, guys, you need to think about your target audience, and think like them. And I think it's the thing. What was interesting when I went to like one of those Trump support group meetings, they were saying things about liberals that might have been true of some liberals, but they weren't true of me.
Right.
Like, I was just like, what are you talking about? Like, and of course I couldn't say anything because at the time I was not necessarily saying I was liberal, but it was sort of shocking to me that they assumed that they knew how we think and what, why we're doing things. And they had it wrong. At least for me, they did.
Right. I think that may be true we see the leadership of both parties. And the leadership may say something and feel a certain way, but that doesn't necessarily represent the majority of the people that they're representing. You think that's true? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. You can't, and I hear that a lot about Trump. I hear a lot of conservatives say, look, I don't necessarily agree with everything he's doing, but there are certain things he's doing that are important to me.
I can agree with that. Yeah, I don't like the rhetoric that he uses. I don't like the way that he treats people from time to time. But there are a lot of good things that I personally feel that come from smaller government. So, right. I can relate with that. I think a lot of times the political parties, they represent the most extreme on both sides. And that's what most of us aren't in that extreme area. We're somewhere in the middle and just want to help people and to gain a little progress on reaching a certain goal. And unfortunately, neither side is getting anything done.
You know what I feel like I wish people would understand better is that, like, let's just say, okay, you don't like the other side. That's fine, But strategically, if you want to move your agenda forward, it's better for you to understand the other side, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's better for you to get along with the other side, because then maybe they're going to, be a little more willing to compromise, or maybe you can influence them into thinking differently. Like, I wish people would understand it's not just about like, hey, everybody get along and flowers and roses. It's not, it's just strategically a good idea.
There has to be some progress in what we're wanting to do. And the only way to do that is to talk to each other about it. Let's be honest. 50% of this country is leaning one way and 50% is leaning another way. Well, that means we're not doing anything. So there has to be some compromise on both sides, I think, to reach our final goal.
Well, so what is your experience then? I'm just curious. Like, so where you are, do you have a lot of liberals and a lot of conservatives?
No, I live in a very conservative area. I do have some liberal friends, a few. So out of 200 people on my Facebook page, there might be 3 that are liberals. So we're a very conservative area here.
So why did you want to do this?
I think I may be a little different than most of the people in my area as far as having the conversation. A lot of my friends do take a harsher stance on things. And I'm very principled too. Don't get me wrong. I believe a certain way, and what I want done, I want done. But I'm at least willing to talk to the other side about it and come up with ways where we can both get what we want.
Well, I'll tell you what's interesting is I talked to, like, one conservative I know said, yeah, we're not curious about you guys.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's true of other conservatives, that there's not as much curiosity about the liberals?
I think that probably is true. I think because of some very pointed issues, say abortion or marriage, things like that, they can't get past the punishment.
What do you mean?
I need to punish these people because they're doing something that I believe is evil. Okay.
Oh.
Thomas Paine spoke about that in one of his essays, that I think that sometimes that clouds people's judgment, this need to find justice or to punish in their viewpoint, and that becomes the most important thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. But I guess then I'm wondering, like, what's the agenda, right? Like, what are they trying to achieve? And then I'm wondering, is that the best way to achieve what they want? I mean, does it make sense to you as a plan?
No, not really. I'll just be honest with you. I think the back and forth that we're doing isn't helping. People are still hungry. People are still without shelter. People are still without medical care. So no, what we're doing isn't working. So I want to try something else. Me personally, I am not about intention. I'm about results. So whatever your intention is doesn't matter. It matters to what the results are of what's going on. So I feel.
You know
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No,
I interrupted you.
Well, I was just finishing up that thought.
Go ahead.
Well, Milton Friedman is a pretty controversial economist. Did a lot of things that revolved around that. We have to come up with new ideas if our old ones aren't working. And I think we can all agree that what we're doing isn't working.
Yes, I think we can. You know what I think the liberals do that's really not a good idea? I think it's maybe not so different than what you were talking about. There is judgment, and there's this sort of anger, and just, I think they think that shaming people is a good idea. And it's not just that their tactics don't work, but I think it makes people dig in harder, right? When you treat somebody like they're stupid, when you treat somebody like, why on earth would you think that? And you're a horrible person. When you devalue somebody that way, I mean, at our core, we all want to believe that we matter. That's what we all want. We all want dignity and respect. And when you take that away from somebody, it's like cutting their jugular vein, and they will never trust you. And they will never sort of just like, oh, you know what, you're right. Let me come on over to your side.
Right.
I mean, it's just stupid. It's stupid. And what I discovered, when I was like meeting people who like Trump supporters, and they were really funny. They would say awful things about Democrats, and they knew I was a Democrat. They didn't care. They would just, say, oh, it was funny, right?
Yeah.
But I had these incredibly warm exchanges with them. Like, I am fond of, like, everybody that I met. I can't even, like, explain to you what the emotional experience was like. But I think it's because I was respectful to them. And I listened to them. And I wanted to know what their ideas were. And I didn't just jump in and say, well, that's wrong and you shouldn't do that. And so it was a very different response. And it was just, it felt good. And I felt like it stopped the anger. Like there were a couple people, and there are angry people on both sides, but I'm just talking about Trump people in particular. There would be this like barrage of anger. And what I found was when I just totally listened to them and respected what they had to say, then it would stop. And then like they would just hug me. Mm-hmm. Wow. It was this like incredible thing. And I don't necessarily think, oh, we can just love it out of people. I don't necessarily think that. But my experience was that the only thing that stopped that level of vitriol was love and compassion and respect.
Right. I completely agree. You know, if you've noticed watching some of the newscasts about the recent town hall meetings that have been going on, and there's been a lot of anger and things at those meetings. But if you watch Justin Amash's town halls and the difference between his town hall and some of the others where he listens to them with respect, hears what they have to say, and then says, well, this is why I believe what I believe, and this is what I think we should do. It's a completely different meeting than a lot of the other ones that we're seeing going across the country right now.
Absolutely. And, you know, and you just want to say to people, like, just fake it if you have to. Just pretend to be respectful, because that's a good starting place. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, just fake it and then see what happens. You might have a different encounter.
Right. Do you have any other stories of some of the reactions you had from people, some specific things that happened while you were doing this project?
I did, actually. I'll tell you one story that really moved me. So I went to a meeting, and this was this guy who was the head of that Trump group. You know, I had met with him. He said, sure, you know, come to the meeting and I'll say, look, she's recruiting people for her project. So he did that. And of course I said, and FYI, I am a Democrat. Apparently this woman who was sitting across the table, and she was probably like in her 50s, and she looked kind of grumpy, and apparently she was really irritated that I was there. I didn't know this until later because he told me. But she turned to him, she was like, what kind of group is this? Like, that you would let this Democrat in, right? But I didn't know. I just, you know, I thought she was kind of being distant, but I didn't know it was directed at me. So anyway, I ended up, this was at a restaurant, and then I ran into her at the cash register, and she had this like fabulous outfit on, and I said, you look fabulous. And she sort of stopped, and she goes, oh well, I just you know, put it together. And I was like, right. Oh well, it looks great. And then she said, oh well, I had a bad day. And I said, oh, I'm sorry. And then she said to me, she just looked at me and she said, I'm heartbroken. And I don't know what it was. I felt for her, and I just hugged her. Mm-hmm. And she was hugging me, and she said, you're so warm. And then she gave me her phone number and said to call her. And it was like, this woman who hated me, didn't want to even talk to me, was rude, right? I mean, it was incredible, and it meant a lot to me. You know, it moved me very deeply.
That's a great story. I've found that most of the people that I've been able to get on the show, even if we believe totally different things, have been very kind people and very willing to talk with me and to not harass me about things that we disagree on.
Good. That's good manners.
Right. So you and I are living proof that this is possible for us to talk with each other with civility and to get through our problems.
Exactly. I feel the same way.
I found that quote from Thomas Paine. Let me read it to you. It says, An avidity to punish is always dangerous to liberty. It leads men to stretch, to misinterpret, and to misapply even the best of laws. He that would make his own liberty secure must guard even his enemy from oppression. For if he violates this duty, he will establish a precedent that will reach to himself.
Yes. I completely agree.
Right. So if we want to guard our own lives, we have to guard even those that disagree with us and listen to what they have to say.
It's true. It's absolutely true. Yeah, I agree with you.
What do you think was the biggest lesson you learned from your project?
The biggest lesson. I think the biggest lesson really was that it takes work. That was to reach across the aisle. That was the biggest takeaway, because, you know, it's something I just hadn't really thought about. You know, it's like, and people are like, hey, we should all get along. I think people don't think about it in the right way. I think people think that they're supposed to feel it, right? Mm-hmm. Like when they go, hey, everybody, let's get along. And then they're like, I'm not feeling it. You know, I don't feel like doing this at all. And then they're like, I guess it doesn't work. And they walk away.
Right.
And what I would say is, I know you feel that. You can still make it work. It's okay to feel like you don't want to be there and you don't want to like somebody. You know, you have to work past that. You have to make an effort to do it, even though you're not feeling it.
Right.
And then you start to see the results. And I learned that because that's what I learned firsthand. You know, that I would literally be interviewing somebody who was saying stuff that I was like, oh my God, I can't even handle it.
Right.
But I had a job to do, right? So I was kind of forced to learn this. And not like I would be rude to people anyway, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I mean, I was I had to walk through this, and that's really what I learned. And so that's the one thing that I just wish more people would think about and understand that it's actually worth it to do it. It does help all of us. We don't benefit by being separate. I mean, unless, you know, you're somebody who's like, yep, we should have a civil war, I guess then in that case, maybe. But
right.
We don't benefit. You know, I don't know. It's a lot of weight to carry around, anger, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just exhausting to be angry at people and hate people. God, it's poison. And you know, when you're nasty to other people, it's almost like you're just swallowing a bottle of poison yourself.
Mm-hmm. That's true. I was really surprised that after last year's election, and usually after the election, politics kind of dies for a while. You know, people are tired and they don't want to talk about politics anymore. And we have this brief window of everybody just, you know, okay, the election's over, it's done. But that's not really what's happened this year. Not at all. Even as maddening as the last election was, people are still out there talking about these things, and I'm exhausted by it.
I am too, and it's so funny. You know, there are some people that, like, in the Liberal Party who are like, you guys got to pace yourselves, okay? Like, pace yourselves. Self-care is important. And I would say the same to you.
Right.
Self-care is important. You know, and it's true. I mean, to carry this intensity, you know, who can sustain that? Mm-hmm. Nobody. It's crazy.
That's true. What was the most shocking thing that someone said to you while you were doing this project?
Oh, there were so many. Okay, there actually were. Okay. I met a guy who was a Republican, and when you met him, he seemed very sort of like straight-laced, smart guy, nice guy, looked sort of businessy. Mm-hmm. And then he started talking to me about what he does, and apparently he's been working with Trump. Mm-hmm. It's like this energy thing. You don't have to really be there, and you can use pictures. And you know, so for instance, it was a really beautiful day that we met. He's like, do you see this beautiful day? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, that's not an accident. And I was like, oh, well, thank you. Thank you. I want to thank you for this beautiful day. And it turns out he had never met Trump, but he's helping him.
Wow.
So that was a little shocking. But, you know, I really liked him. He was a nice guy. Let's see, what else is shocking? I heard a lot of conspiracy theory stuff about the Clintons that, I don't believe those things, and they were pretty shocking.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
I understand.
Here's the thing. I love new information, okay? So whatever you want to throw my way, great. I'm listening,
Uh-huh.
So it doesn't matter if I agree or disagree. I'm kind of interested in what other people are thinking about. So it was totally interesting, but it was just like, holy crap. I mean, I really, that person was kind of fringy.
Yeah.
I interviewed Bernie Goetz, who he's a subway vigilante. I don't know if you know who he is. He's actually pretty famous. His there's a Billy Joel song that has Bernie Goetz in the lyrics, his name. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I interviewed him, and he said some things that were kind of disturbing to me, like that some women should, and I assume he was talking about women maybe who were who were poor, and that they should maybe be sterilized after their first baby.
Oh,
and
my
I
goodness.
said, yes. And I said, well, what if they don't want to be? And he said, tough.
Wow.
That was hard to hear that somebody would think that.
Yeah. Believe me, the rest of us don't really feel that way, okay?
Thank you. I am relieved. Thank you. Thank you. But look, there are kooky people everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And there's kooky people in every party. And I'll tell you what, I remember going to some of these meetings, and some of the people were kind of kooky. And I thought, I wonder if somebody went to a bunch of liberal meetings, if we would stand up to the sort of discerning eye, right? Like, I think you can find kooks wherever you go. And I think meetings tend to draw kooks a little bit.
Yeah.
So, but it was always entertaining. Always. Never boring. So
I bet.
I really enjoyed it. Yeah, for sure.
What are you planning on doing now? Are you going to expand this project, or is there other things that you're working on?
Well, that's what I'm trying to decide. I do want to do something more with this. I kind of originally did it thinking about it like an art installation project. Like, I just added content through the election, and then I stopped there. I feel like people need to. I feel like the dust needs to settle a little bit before I jump in and go, "Hey, everybody, we should get along." Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's very intense right now.
Yes.
It's almost like you couldn't even sort of cut through the static right now. Mm-hmm. So, which is good because I'm also not clear on what I want to do next. But I want to do, I think, like a next chapter. Mm-hmm. And I am thinking about maybe talking to some people I went to high school with. I think that's kind of interesting. I think that community is really interesting. And I think that when you are trying to solve a problem, I think it's important to look at places that are doing something successfully. And I think that community, the JIS community, while it's not perfect, I think they're doing a lot of things right. So I think that might be interesting to do something that has to do with that.
Right. It definitely sounds like that would be a good place to start. There seems to be a good mix of thoughts and ideas in that group, and it's halfway civil to each other. So it sounds like a great place to start.
Well, and it's also because there's also this sort of funny personal side to it, right? Like, I haven't seen them in 30 years. So it's like, hey, remember when we went to the Sadie Hawkins Day dance? And now you're a Trump supporter and I'm a Hillary supporter. Funny how that is. You know? I mean, it's kind of funny. It's interesting. And I would love to see these people again. But I don't have sort of a set idea yet.
Okay.
So I'm thinking maybe like in another couple months I'll sort of launch something else.
Right. Do you feel like you achieved some of the goal that you wanted when you started the project?
Oh, that's a good question. I didn't have set goals. What was nice about this project was I had a very clear vision. Uh-huh. It was nice to just be like, I have this idea, I really believe in it, and I want to execute it. And it was scary because I hadn't done that kind of an independent project before, sort of all on my own. And although I had great people who worked with me, really good photographers, a wonderful art director, and then the guy who built the website was fantastic. But it was scary. Yeah, I mean, I felt like I created a good product. I feel really proud of the website. It didn't go viral or anything. I feel like it was a good starting place and a good jumping off place to continue to build it. So yeah, I mean, I feel proud about what I achieved. But did I don't know, affect the world in some dramatic way? No, I don't think so. But
one thing about
I got good feedback.
Good. And it will be there in theory forever. So
right.
There's always going to be someone that's going to run across this and appreciate it and hopefully, touch them in some way. Just like this podcast.
Exactly. It will live forever.
Now that you did this project and you did have, and it did kind of change you from what I understand from this conversation,
it did.
How do you think that's going to affect your life now outside of these projects and public things, but just you personally?
Oh, it was a good project for me just because it forced me to kind of do things that were scary for me. And so I feel, I think, more confident in my ideas and more confident that I can continue to kind of do things like this. I think it also, oh my God, it got me back into politics. Like most of my career was in theater and I knew nothing about politics. So I actually have Trump to thank for, for helping me learn about politics. So I learned a lot about politics. So I feel like I met so many great people. Honestly, like I felt every day like, what's better than this?
Mm-hmm,
and then I would be like, I'm going to a Trump meeting, and people are like, what? And I'm like, I know, it's awesome. I felt lucky and happy the entire time. It was a pleasure. I loved every bit of it, and so I carry that joy with me. Honestly, I know that sounds silly, but I do.
Well, that's cool. I like that. I'm happy that more people are getting involved in politics. It seems like,
right?
If he didn't do anything else, he did do that. People are paying attention and interested and speaking out, which I think is a good thing.
I totally agree. I actually was working with a group, a nonprofit organization called Generation Citizen. I did their brand strategy, and what they do is they teach action civics to kids, like high school kids. Mm-hmm. And essentially action civics is civics education through doing projects. So you are like going out there and you're advocating. They'll pick a cause and they'll interact with their local public officials to get whatever they're trying to do done. And we were helping them with their brand strategy. This was a couple of years ago, and we were talking about how civic engagement was just so low and people just didn't care. Blah, blah. Well. Mm-hmm. Now it's a different story. And actually, the guy who's head of Generation Citizen, one of the letters he sent out recently was like, we're the most popular kid at the dance. Because now everybody's like, oh my God, we've got to get our kids involved. And I'm sure that's happening on both sides. I think everybody feels like, all right, everybody, get ready.
Right.
And that's good.
Good. I totally agree with you. I think it's fantastic that people are getting more involved. I do not condone any of the violence that's taking place on either side from anybody.
No.
But I'm all about people getting involved in different organizations and running for office. Get rid of some of these people that have been up there for 25 years. Run for office and let's do something new.
Exactly. And we need new people. I think both sides would say that.
I completely agree. Yes.
So hopefully that will happen, and we'll see where it's going. But I think people are engaged, if anything.
That's a move in the right direction for sure.
Yeah.
Was there anything else that you would like to plug or let the audience know about your project or anything going on?
Thank you. I mean, I'm going to be working. I'm doing some work with nonprofit organizations. I'm doing brand strategy for a really wonderful group called Project Picture Day. And I'm also doing brand strategy for a YouTube show called China Uncensored. It's like The Daily Show, but it's about China.
Oh, wow.
And they actually have a really big following. It's pretty interesting. And then I'm going to be working with a politician, which is kind of fun. He's with the Libertarian Party. Crossing over to do that.
Wow.
Not a Democrat. But I think it would be fun, right? I'm all in. Yeah, and then I think Meet We the People, probably within the next few months, I'll sort of start a new chapter.
Well, that sounds great. Well, thank you. Thank you very much for being here today. I loved talking with you and hearing your side of politics a little bit.
Oh, thank you. It was really fun. I appreciate this.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
I certainly hope you enjoyed this episode of Kitchen Table Politics. Please give us a follow on Twitter at KTPOLS. That's KT Polls. And check out our website, ktpolitics.com. We'll see you next time.